If Emma had known that one decision would change her life forever, she might have thought twice. But love makes people do crazy things. And now, as the cold steel handcuffs locked around her wrists, she realized this was the price of loving Daniel. It all started on a quiet Saturday morning. Emma was in the kitchen slicing tomatoes for breakfast when Daniel burst into the house, his face pale, his hands trembling. "Emma, something bad happened," he whispered. The knife slipped from her fingers, clattering against the cutting board. She had never seen Daniel like this before, his eyes wild, his breath unsteady. "What's wrong?" she asked, stepping closer. He swallowed hard. I think I'm in trouble." Emma's heart pounded. "Daniel, what do you mean?" He ran a shaky hand through his hair, his voice barely above a whisper. "Last night, I got into a fight with a guy at the bar, and now he's dead." The room fell silent. Emma felt the air leave her lungs. "What?" "The police think I did it," Daniel said, his voice cracking. "Emma, I swear, I didn't kill him. I argued with him, but I left before anything happened. But people saw us fighting. I was the last one with him." Emma's mind raced. A dead man, a police investigation. The love of her life standing in front of her, looking at her like a drowning man gasping for air. Before she could speak, a loud knock shattered the silence. "Back, back! Open up! This is the police!" Daniel froze. His eyes darted to the door, then back to Emma. "They're here," he whispered. Emma felt something inside her snap into place. A decision so reckless, so dangerous, yet so full of love, it made her hands shake. She grabbed Daniel's wrist and looked deep into his eyes. "Trust me," she whispered. Then she turned and opened the door. Two officers stood there, their faces cold and unreadable. "Mrs. Emma?" one of them asked. "Yes," she replied, her voice steady. "We have a warrant for Daniel's arrest. He is a suspect in the murder of Kevin Blake. He needs to come with us for questioning." Daniel took a step back, his face draining of color. Emma clenched her fists. Then she did something that shocked even herself. "You're mistaken," she said, her voice clear. "Daniel didn't kill Kevin. I did." Silence. Daniel gasped behind her. The officers exchanged glances, their expressions shifting from certainty to confusion. "You?" one of them asked. Emma nodded. "Yes, I was there. I fought with Kevin. Things got out of hand. It was me." Daniel grabbed her arm. "Emma, no." She turned and gave him a look so sharp, so final, that he stopped speaking. The officers didn't hesitate. They pulled out the handcuffs, locking them around her wrists. The cold bite of metal sent a shiver down her spine, but she didn't flinch. She only looked at Daniel, memorizing his face as they led her away. Daniel ran after them. "Wait, you can't just take her! She's lying! She didn't do anything!" One of the officers sighed. "She just confessed, sir. If she's innocent, we'll find out." Emma didn't fight. She didn't resist. As they placed her in the back of the police car, she stared straight ahead. She had just walked into a nightmare, and she had no idea if she would ever wake up. The police car sped through the city, but Emma barely noticed the streets flashing past. Her heart pounded like a drum inside her chest. She had just lied to the police, confessed to a crime she didn't commit. For Daniel. But had she just made the biggest mistake of her life? The officer in the front seat spoke without turning around. "You sure you want to stick to that confession, Mrs. Emma? Because once we step into that station, things get real." Emma clenched her fists, forcing herself to sound calm. "I already told you. I killed Kevin." The officer sighed, shaking his head. "You don't look like a killer." Emma didn't answer. Her silence was the only armor she had left. When they arrived at the police station, everything felt like a blur. She was fingerprinted, photographed, and then led into a cold, dimly lit interrogation room. The walls were gray, the metal chair uncomfortable. A camera blinked red in the corner, recording every second. Then the waiting began. Minutes turned into hours. Emma sat still, her hands resting on the cold table. Her mind was racing. Would Daniel run? Would he let her sit here alone? Or would he find a way to fix this? The door creaked open, and a man in a dark suit stepped in. Detective Harris. His face was lined with years of experience, his eyes sharp. He sat across from her, folding his hands. "Emma, let's not waste time," he said, his voice calm but firm. "I've seen people lie to protect someone before, and right now I think that's exactly what you're doing." Emma held his gaze. "I already told you the truth." Harris smirked. "Really? Then tell me, what weapon did you use?" Emma's breath hitched. She hadn't thought that far. Or maybe, Harris continued, leaning in, you don't know, because you weren't there. Emma's hands tightened into fists under the table. The detective sighed, flipping through a file. Kevin Blake was beaten to death. It was brutal. Someone wanted him gone badly. You don't seem like the type, Emma. He looked up. But your husband? Now, he has a record of bar fights, doesn't he? Emma swallowed. Daniel didn't do it. Harris studied her for a long moment. You're willing to go to prison for this man, aren't you? Emma didn't respond. Harris leaned back. Let me tell you how this is going to go. We'll investigate, and when we prove you're lying, you'll be charged with obstruction of justice. You'll go to prison anyway. And Daniel? If he's guilty, he'll walk free while you rot in a cell. Emma's pulse pounded. Then Harris delivered the final blow. Let me ask you something, Emma. Do you really think Daniel is out there fighting for you right now? The question hit her like a slap. Would Daniel fight for her? Would he do everything to clear her name? Or was he already planning to let her take the fall? A chill ran down her spine. Harris stood up. Think about that while you wait. He knocked on the door, and an officer stepped in. Take her to holding. Emma was dragged out of the room, her mind spinning. They marched her down a dim corridor, past rows of cells filled with women in orange jumpsuits. Some stared, others ignored her. The smell of sweat and metal filled the air. Then the officer unlocked a door and shoved her inside. The cell was small, the bed hard, the toilet exposed in the corner. The door slammed shut behind her. Emma sat on the metal bed, her pulse hammering. She had always believed love was worth any sacrifice. But now, sitting in this freezing cell, surrounded by strangers, a terrible question crept into her mind. What if she had just sacrificed herself for a man who wouldn't do the same for her? Emma sat in the freezing cell, hugging herself, her thoughts louder than the distant echoes of prisoners talking and laughing. The walls were closing in, pressing against her chest. How long had it been? Hours? A day? She had given up everything for Daniel. But where was he? Her mind replayed Harris's question like a broken record. Do you really think Daniel is out there fighting for you right now? Emma wanted to believe yes, but doubt was creeping in, and it felt like poison in her veins. Then came the first betrayal. The next morning, the cell door clanked open, and a guard called her name. Emma, you have a visitor. Hope shot through her. Daniel! She hurried out, her legs weak from exhaustion, her heart pounding. Was he finally here to fix this? But when she reached the visitor's room, her breath caught in her throat. It wasn't Daniel. It was Lisa, Emma's best friend. Lisa's face was tight with emotion, her fingers gripping the table between them. She leaned forward, her voice low but sharp. Emma, tell me the truth. Did you do it? Emma's hands shook. Lisa, you know I didn't. Lisa inhaled deeply, her expression unreadable. Then why the hell are you sitting in this place, taking the blame for a crime you didn't commit? Emma swallowed hard. Because Daniel needs me. Lisa flinched like she had been slapped. Then she dropped the bombshell. Emma, she whispered, Daniel left town. Emma's stomach twisted. What? Lisa nodded, her jaw clenched. I went to your house. It was empty. I asked around, and someone said he packed a bag and disappeared last night. The air felt thick, suffocating. Emma shook her head. No, he wouldn't. Lisa reached into her purse, pulled out her phone, and slid it across the table. Read the text. Emma hesitated before picking it up. Her hands trembled as she read the message Lisa had received. Tell Emma I'm sorry. I can't do this. I have to go. Her vision blurred. Daniel was gone. He had let her take the fall. Lisa grabbed her hands. Emma, listen to me. You have to fix this. You have to tell the truth before it's too late. Emma's chest burned, a mix of anger, betrayal, and heartbreak clawing inside her. The man she had risked everything for had abandoned her like she was nothing. But she wasn't nothing, and she wasn't going to let him destroy her life. Emma lifted her chin, fire flickering in her eyes. Get me a lawyer. Lisa exhaled in relief, squeezing her hands. I already did. As the guards led her back to her cell, Emma's mind was no longer clouded with doubt. She had spent too many hours suffering for a man who had no intention of saving her. Now she was going to save herself. Emma sat in the interrogation room once again, but this time she wasn't trembling. She wasn't confused. She wasn't afraid. She was ready. The door opened, and Detective Harris walked in, a smirk tugging at his lips. Well, Emma, changed your mind? Emma met his gaze with steel in her eyes. I want to talk, but only with my lawyer present. Harris leaned back, studying her. Interesting. Let's see if you're finally ready to tell the truth. Minutes later, her lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Rachel, entered the room, setting down a folder. Emma will be making an official statement. Emma took a deep breath. I lied. I didn't kill Kevin. Harris's smirk widened. I knew it. So tell me, Emma, who are you protecting? Emma's nails dug into the table. I was protecting Daniel. Harris's expression darkened. And where is Daniel now? Emma's jaw tightened. He ran. Left town. Harris sat up straighter. Of course he did. Because he's guilty. Rachel slid a document across the table. Emma is willing to tell you everything she knows, but in return, we want a deal. Harris glanced at the papers. If she's innocent, she doesn't need a deal. Rachel nodded. Then let her go. Silence filled the room. Harris exhaled sharply, then stood up. Fine, but Emma, if you're lying again, I promise you won't walk out of here next time. But Emma wasn't lying this time. She was done lying. Within hours, her name was cleared and she was released. As she stepped outside the prison gates, Lisa was waiting. Emma inhaled the fresh air, her heart hammering in her chest. Lisa pulled her into a hug. It's over. Emma's eyes burned. No, she whispered. It's just beginning. Because Daniel might have run, but he wouldn't get away. Emma wasn't the woman she had been before those 100 hours in prison. She wasn't weak. She wasn't blind. And now, she was coming for him.